Activities came to an abrupt end. Adaulu kept screaming, "Vengeance," but no one paid heed to her. The people were dismissed and all retired to their various huts. Adaulu reported what she saw to the Council of Elders, but they dismissed her as quickly as she started. "She is just a child," one of them said. "A mere girl," someone added. For days, men held meetings upon meetings, but could not come up with the cause of their son's disappearance, neither a solution. Women wept, men kept seeking the priest's face in trembling. Adaulu developed a habit of praying to a god different from the kingdom's god in faith of his righteousness. She prayed for the fate of women. She prayed for a change in tradition. She prayed for the safety of Agunna. As days passed, something strange happened. Adaulu was going through the bush alone in search of sacred herbs when suddenly she stepped on something that pierced through her skin and resulted to a bad cut. Strangely, the cut began to develop into a disgusting sore. Adaulu quickly grabbed herbs of various kinds and applied. Like a miracle, as if time was ticking backwards, she began to heal. Adaulu was so amazed and pleased at her discovery. Never has such happened in the kingdom of Olu. Adaulu, unsure of the exact herb that caused the miracle, took the leftovers of various kinds and ran home. Days later, rumors began spreading that the king was struck by the gods and was terribly ill. The men's gathering was rescheduled as they gathered to sympathize with their king and also seek solutions to the issue of their missing sons. Adaolu's father would come back with news about the king's health. The king had a bad cut and now it has turned into a terribly looking sore, eating deep into the king each passing day, Adaolu's father disclosed one day. He went further to explain that so many medicine men had tried to help the king, but to no avail, as the illness was strange to them all. The priest himself could do nothing as he says the gods were silent. Adaolu's mother suggested that the kingdom was suffering due to a committed abomination. On the other hand, Adaolu was of the opinion that the gods were impotent, but she never said it out. Just then, Adaolu gasped and she recalled her experience at the bush. The king's case was so similar. She turned to her father and said, "Papa, I can help the king." Her father stared at her in amazement. Her mother hissed and went inside her hut. Her father has doubts as he himself, whom she learned from, has been unable to help the king. Adaolu explained her ordeal at the bush and tried harder to convince her father. "You will have to convince the council of elders first," her father said sadly. Adaolu didn't bother. The next day, when men gathered at the palace to see the king, Adaolu went with her father to the palace. Mother and daughter dressed like native doctors. Both chanted songs as they marched on. Onlookers could not stop staring at them. When they got to the palace, Adaolu was taken aback at how magnificent and beautifully decorated the palace huts were. Adaolu's father immediately made a request to see the king. On entering into the royal court where meetings were held, behold, the king sitting weakly on his throne. "Your Majesty," Adaolu's father began with a bow, "may you live long." The king raised his staff slowly as a way of saying, "Go on." Adaolu's father explained his daughter's experience to the king and announced that his daughter could heal him. The men immediately began to rebuke him. "Who allowed a girl into the royal court?" one of them asked. "What men can't do, even the gods are silent on this. How dare you turn our king to a subject of mockery?" Adaolu did not mind the unwelcoming faces of the men. She focused her gaze on the king. Luckily, the king raised his staff as an approval. Adaolu immediately set to work. Her father stood behind her, muttering some words of prayer. She did all she could and waited hopefully for results. Unfortunately, nothing happened. Disappointed and in tears, Adaolu ran out of the palace. Her father apologized to the elders and went after his daughter. Later in the evening, some elders marched into Adaolu's compound in the company of royal guards. "The king summons you," one of the elders announced to Adaolu's father. "Both you and your daughter." For the first time, Adaolu was scared that she had gotten into trouble. Her heart raced with worry all the way to the palace. At the palace, she and her father were welcomed warmly by some palace guards that seemed to have been waiting for their arrival. They waited outside till the king summoned them into the inner royal court. As they stepped in, behold, the king in his fullness of strength with no sign of illness. "What is your name?" the king asked, looking directly at Adaulu. Adaulu nervously said out her name. "You are indeed a daughter of Ulu Kingdom," came the king's voice. "Today, through you, I receive life." A smile spread across Adaulu's face. Her joy knew no bounds. She was able to save the king. The king asked her to make a request, and it would be granted. After thinking for a while, Adaulu politely asked that she return the next day to make her request. How news spread. Early the next day, Adaulu's family was awoken by a crowd of women and girls singing praises of Adaulu. Adaulu's parents were as proud of their daughter. Adaulu's mother had her shoulders up in the air as she immediately assumed the position of the women's leader. Together, the crowd danced to the palace. At the palace, the king came out himself to meet them. The women kept singing and dancing till the king motioned for silence and beckoned on Adaulu to speak. "If it pleases the king, let him be gracious enough to find us a voice as females in the kingdom of Ulu," Adaulu humbly asked. The king was moved by Adaulu's request. He expected her to ask for wealth and lot of it. There was silence for a while. One of the elders in the council murmured something to another elder, and before long, everyone was talking at the same time. Arguments arose. "Tradition cannot be changed. A woman should be under a man," one of the elders shouted. "We are humans too," a woman shouted back. Somehow, Adaulu had given them courage. "Mere women, what do they know?" the chief priest shouted as he entered the scene. "Your Majesty," he started, "don't tell me you would agree to what this little girl is saying. A tradition that has been kept for ages should not be stopped by an ordinary child. A girl for that matter. She is just a small child. She knows nothing about the history and tradition of our kingdom. What does she possibly know to keep Ulu Kingdom in its prosperity and glory?" "Enough to do what neither a man nor the priest could do," the queen interrupted. "She saved the king's life. Without her help, this kingdom would have been in ruins. She brought the glory and strength of this kingdom back to life. She brought Ulu Kingdom back to life," the queen argued. "The gods will not be silent at this," the priest said angrily. "But they were silent when the king was at the point of dying," the queen fired back. All the while, Adaulu remained silent. The king motioned for silence again. After thinking for a while, he said, "She only asked for a voice for the females in matters concerning the kingdom. That is not much of a thing to ask. Besides, they are also part of this kingdom, as they are responsible for the multiplication of our kingdom. At this, I will agree to what Adaulu has requested," the king concluded. The women began to jubilate as the king announced that the council of elders will include women, for a start in granting Adaulu's request. Adaulu's family was also showered with gifts from the king and other people. Days later, Adaulu explained to the council of elders her opinion about the missing boys. The king immediately sent spies out without the consultation of the priest. The missing sons were found among the captives of the neighboring village. Battles were fought. Ulu progressed. The boys were brought home. Adaulu reunited with her best friend, Agunna. Her fame spread widely. Some months later, Adaulu exposed the chief priest and his false gods. The entire kingdom stood at her back as they fought against the chief priest. It took months to stop, but finally, the evil tradition practiced by the chief priest was put to an end. And the king banished the wicked chief priest into the evil forest, where he became food for wild animals. Another chief priest was installed, and balance came back to Ulu Kingdom. Ulu became a kingdom ruled by a king with his queen and council of both male and female elders. Adaulu dreamt of becoming a female leader in the future. The people lived happily ever after, and every year they celebrated the day Adaulu took a step in changing the fate of Ulu Kingdom.